What kind of skills do we need to have as historians? Well, one of the most important skills to have is the skill of research. Why is this so important? Because the job of a historian is to be able to research a certain person, a period of time, item, culture. Whatever you learn or already know about history has at some point or other been researched by a historian. And guess what? You're all historians now. Now, I know that you might have done a bit of research in the past, but this time around we're going to need to go into even more depth. This term, you'll be doing a leveled assessment where you'll be able to research any World War I related topic that you like. And in order to do so, you're going to need to do some research. Now, first of all, just take a look at what's unusual about this video. If I've got it working properly, throughout the video you're going to have some questions pop up that you'll need to answer. This helps me gauge your understanding, and it is compulsory, so you have to answer the questions because they form part of your homework. As well as this, it does let me know who's watched the video and who hasn't. So, research. The first thing that you need to remember is the difference between a primary and a secondary source. A primary source is something that's written by a person who has been directly affected by what they're writing about. So an example might be a letter written home from soldiers, photos, videos, journal entries, or even books, so long as the author is writing about something that they have experienced themselves. A secondary source is written by someone with a second, third, or more hand experience. For example, a history textbook or a book written years after the fact would be examples of secondary sources. Often, a secondary source will back up what they're saying by using quotes from primary sources. This means that a secondary source might be easier to understand as they can simplify the language. Now, in your research projects, I want you to use a mixture of both primary and secondary sources. I also want you to remember the difference between what we call the 5 W's and an H: who, what, when, where, why, and how. These are all questions that you'll need to answer in your research project. So let's go over how to use some very useful websites. First up, we have Google, which is usually your first port of call when it comes to research, right? But how do we actually use it effectively? Of course, you might just type in your research topic. So for this example, we're going to be doing the Battle of the Somme. Problem being that as soon as I type in the Battle of the Somme, it's going to come up with a whole heap of information, and to be honest, it's a bit overwhelming. So what do you need to do? You need to narrow down your topic. For example here, British soldiers in the Battle of the Somme. That's going to make it a little bit easier for me to research. The more you begin to learn about a topic, the more you can narrow down your searches. But here's a question for you. Is Yahoo Answers a good source? The answer? No. Because anyone could write an answer. You don't know how reliable it is. Plus, if you just type in this question on the internet and just click the first answer you get, you haven't really done your own research, have you? How about Wikipedia? Wikipedia is a great example of an easily accessed secondary source. How do we know it's reliable? Because you can scroll to the bottom and see exactly where they got their information from. Here's a handy hint as well. If you replace the EN on the URL with simple, it'll give you a simplified version of the same article. It makes it a lot easier to understand. We'll also be getting a lot of books from the library, which means that you'll be needing to do some library research as well. The most important places to look for information are, of course, the table of contents and the index. You might also find a glossary in certain books to define certain words for you. Other books might have a bibliography. This, if it's a secondary source, can show you where else you might find information on the same topic. Now, your job before class on Friday is to decide on a topic to do with World War I that you might want to research. You'll be creating an informative booklet on this topic, which will be marked and labelled, like I said before. If you're a bit stuck for a topic, here are a couple of ideas that you might want to get started with. Take a look online and see which one interests you the most. You'll have to double check with me if you're not too sure about where to go or if your topic is acceptable. A good way of doing that is to comment on Edmodo, because you'll get some really fast feedback as I'm on there most days. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. And for those of you who might want a bit more of a challenge, take a look at this infographic. It's a useful one, all about how to Google things without just using keywords. Pause the video where you are now and see how much of this information you can use in your own Google searches. Good luck!